Music is powerful. This is the final boss fight of Dark Souls. The final battle, the culmination of everything you've worked toward, everything you've accomplished throughout the game. You've traveled all across this dying kingdom, to its shining heights and its darkest lows. You've conquered bosses both powerful and monstrous, each accompanied by grand set pieces and epic, emphatic melodies echoing your every swing. And this final fight is no different. You take on the most powerful lord, Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight. Wielding a giant flaming sword, he commanded armies, slayed dragons, and ushered in the Age of Fire, bringing power and prosperity to Lordran. With imposing, heart-pounding music to coincide, Gwyn is truly the most grand, intense, and difficult boss fight of Dark Souls. Or so you'd think. That music was in fact not Gwyn's theme. This is the real theme that plays during this fight. It isn't some glorious choir chanting as you take on impossible odds, but rather it's melancholic, tragic. Gwyn is no longer the immensely powerful king he once was. He's no longer the fierce ruler and dragon slayer feared by all. He's sacrificed his own soul to keep the Age of Fire alive, to keep his reign from ending. And now, centuries later, he has become nothing more than a weak old man. The fight is nowhere near as difficult as previous bosses, and is made even more trivial if you learn to parry him, the only boss that lets you do so. Gwyn's story is tragic, and his theme echoes this. The song is played in the key of A minor, and throughout its entirety, plays only white piano keys. He was always too afraid of the dark, so much so that it led him to losing his humanity, becoming a hollow himself. A fall from grace that fits within this world, this story so perfectly. Someone once said in a comment on the original video for Gwyn's theme, "This wasn't a boss fight. It was a mercy killing." Music. One word with so much importance behind it, so much influence. In a single flourish of sound, a single theme, this finale is fundamentally changed. Because music is more than just background noise. It's more than the simple melodies made to make a scene feel bigger or more intense. It's alive. When music transcends the game, it becomes a character of its own. It drives us to feel, and lives on in our memories. It becomes its own story. I've always loved music. Ever since I was a kid, my dad's passion for it passed down to me, enjoying the vast array of 70s and 80s songs he would play during long car rides, or the music videos he would watch in the living room. But I quickly learned that the world of music is far more expansive than just what I had heard from my dad, or the songs I would hear on the radio. Movies and shows rely heavily on music, letting their soundtracks elevate their stories. But there's one medium whose music had more of an impact on me than anything else. A medium about feeling, about emotion. Video games. If the interactive nature of a game, the influence over what happens, makes the experience more immersive and impactful than anything else, then doesn't that mean a game's music can have a greater effect on us than any other kind of music? It can affect our emotions, our perception of the world. Have you ever seen one of those how music can change the way you view a scene videos? Where they'll take a scene and alter the music within it, completely changing how the scene makes you feel or what it implies. It can make something typically intense and serious into something bright and happy, or vice versa. It's such a fascinating thing to experience, and showcases just how important music is. It's why Gwyn's boss fight feels so different, so special. Dark Souls conditions you to associate its music with what's happening on screen. Every boss fight has such powerful, intense music, and so you expect the same when you begin your fight with Gwyn. But the moment that theme begins to play, you immediately know that something is off. That this fight is different. There's a reason the question, "Why do I hear boss music?" is so relatable. When that music plays, it acts as a sort of trigger for how we're supposed to feel. Lots of women will listen to music while in labor. Some people will listen to music while undergoing surgery. Even individuals with cerebral palsy have undergone a treatment known as vibroacoustic therapy, using music and low-frequency sound to assess the effects it has on the brain. Music is a medicine used everywhere for both people's mental and physical health. It has been shown to help people relax, decrease pain perception, and for those with cerebral palsy, has helped improve motor functions. Music is powerful. Those times that it gives you chills, that's dopamine being released in your brain. It's such a basic yet effective way to make people feel something. Games simply wouldn't be what they are without the themes and motifs we associate with them. They're vital to making a game more than just entertainment. Music can push them to become an experience, to make you feel. So let's embark on a journey and find out just how powerful music can be. Now, I'm only one person, and there's tons of amazing games with incredible soundtracks that I've never played, so I wanted to get some other perspectives. Throughout this video, I'll be asking several other YouTubers about their personal favorite video game song of all time.
That's a really good question because there are so many candidates for me, but I think the one that I would nominate as the single best would be the music at the end of the mission Fallen Angel on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Just imagine it, you're deep in enemy territory, your allies cannot get you out, you are on your own, you either escape or you die. You have a car, and one of your allies is in a helicopter. That's it, and you've got the army of an entire city falling down on you. Tensions are high, there's explosions everywhere, there's cars crashing into each other, and then this fucking song plays. Oh my god. It's dark and intense, and the vocalist just takes your ears to Orgasm City. It's a really special piece from the Black Ops 2 soundtrack, as no other song from that game has made me feel like this. The instrumentals come in and they kind of emphasize that tension, but then the vocalist shows up and it's the sense of like fear. Not horror, but it certainly drives that same sense of danger, because that's kind of where you are. You are deep in enemy territory and they all know you're there and they're all trying to kill you. It doesn't get more dangerous than that, and gameplay wise, it really doesn't get more exciting.
While many games utilize their stories or visuals to make you feel, some let those take a back seat and allow for the music to drive how you feel when playing, putting it up front and center and making sure you don't forget it. There's two games I feel are exemplary ways of doing this: the cozy world of Animal Crossing and Doom. When feeling down, most people will listen to sad music. When feeling happy, most will turn on upbeat, energetic music. It helps reinforce how we're supposed to feel, and gives us that cathartic release of emotion. Animal Crossing is all about cozy relaxation. It's a game accessible to everyone, where anyone can just sit down after a long day, start fishing, and enjoy the peaceful ambience. So many games these days are so hyper-focused on action or detailed storytelling, forcing the player to be locked in at all times, giving the game their complete, undivided attention. But Animal Crossing says screw that. It's the kind of game where you can just turn your brain off and live in your own little town with all your animal neighbors. Doom also lets you turn your brain off and just enjoy the game, albeit in a slightly more violent manner. You play as this all-powerful murder machine, gunning down and ripping apart demons left and right. You're essentially a godlike figure, so filled with rage and bloodlust that you simply cannot die. The game is a power fantasy like no other, giving you access to tons of different guns and abilities, and just throwing hordes of demons at you. These two games are on completely opposite spectrums, but both are perfect examples of how music can make or break the atmosphere of a game. Kazumi Totaka has been the sound director and main composer for all the mainline Animal Crossing games, and his signature musical style has become the backbone of the series, even from the very start. In an interview for Dobotsu no Mori, or Animal Forest, the Japanese version of Animal Crossing in 2001, Totaka talked about how the game's musical identity came to be. There were 3 composers working under me, and I divided the work between them. One person worked on field music, another on the indoors music, and another worked on the event music. Basically, these guys were all capable veterans, so I mainly left things up to them. However, if you don't give at least some clear direction, then it's actually hard to create anything. So we hammered that out in a meeting. Our first idea was to match the peaceful, relaxed mood of the game with acoustic music. But then we realized that would make things too relaxed. We came up with the concept of using very electronic, synthy sounds, but composing and arranging the music in an acoustic way for the listener. This very unique form of composition is what makes Animal Crossing's music so peaceful and memorable. You don't often hear these kinds of instruments used in this way, and it's what gave that first Animal Crossing its identity. In another interview, this time for the latest game in the series, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Totaka explained that with the game being on an island, the key words he chose for the music would be easygoing and free. To achieve an even more relaxed and carefree vibe than any other game in the series, they decided to stray from the more synth-based sounds and went with an actual acoustic guitar and other string instruments. Keyboard instruments, like the piano, create an academic and complex feeling, whereas violins are too elegant for a deserted island. Plus, anyone can pick up an acoustic guitar. It has a low barrier to entry, in that anyone can play music as long as they know a few chords. That's also why the guitar is so familiar to everyone. We thought that this familiarity might help players feel relaxed and comfortable. Also, the way a strummed chord reverberates conjures up images of a wide open space with the horizon off in the distance and a pleasant breeze blowing, making the listener feel like they've been set free. You can really see the evolution of the series over time, and while the newer games may have slightly different instrumentation, they all still share that same relaxed mood and innocent charm that the series was built on. While still containing some synth elements, New Horizons took on a more tangible acoustic sound, making it feel that much more relaxing, perfect for its setting. It's extremely therapeutic to just walk around your town listening to the soft strumming of a guitar, or to go fishing on the beach late at night, hearing the breeze of a harmonica and the waves crashing. It's some of my favorite music for listening to while studying or sleeping or working out. Wait. No, hold on, that can't be right. The first time I heard Doom music, I immediately knew what kind of game it would be. Non-stop, balls to the walls, testosterone. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal put every other action shooter to shame, being the most fast-paced, action-packed shooter I've ever had the extreme pleasure of playing. But its absolutely ballistic soundtrack goes beyond just amplifying the intensity. There's a comment on one of the videos for Doom Eternal's most popular song, The Only Thing They Fear Is You, that I feel describes the soundtrack perfectly. Imagine buying an album and getting a whole game on top of it. But to understand how these games came to sound like this, we need to take a trip back to its origins. Doom 1 first released in 1993. And while its soundtrack was very guitar heavy and metal inspired, it was nowhere near the sound we have today. It was far more restrained, in part due to the technical limitations at the time, but also the composer. id Software, the studio behind the game, initially only wanted heavy metal for the soundtrack, really driving home that action hero feel. But Bobby Prince, the composer of the original Doom games, was against this notion. He thought that just relying on heavy metal wouldn't work, and would get tiresome. This led to much of the game consisting of very atmospheric, mysterious sounding tracks. It all added to that creepy, horror aspect of hell, keeping you on edge at all times. Of course, he would still end up using guitars, and it's a good thing he did as they became a staple of the series. While the slower tracks added to the horror, they were evenly balanced by the guitars and fast-paced tracks. The sound of Doom was born. Prince has spoken a lot about the limitations he ran into while composing for the game. He was forced to work around things like the limited file sizes for music, and how he could only have 9 different music or percussion notes playing at once. Since the drums often took up more than half of these slots, he only had 4 musical notes to work with. Future entries of the series followed in the footsteps of the first game, but over time they gained more room to breathe. By Doom 3, the soundtrack became synonymous with metal, albeit its gameplay having a far slower pace than its predecessors. In any case, the results speak for themselves. Doom became a household name in the gaming industry, revolutionizing what a first-person shooter could be, and its music was front and center. Fast forward to 2014, Doom, while heavily respected for its influence in the FPS genre, is nothing more than a memory. The franchise was dead in the water, until composer Mick Gordon was brought on to the series revival, Doom 2016. The goal was not only to pay homage to the series' roots, but to truly bring Doom into the modern era of gaming. And in order to do that, they needed a new sound. When coming up with ideas for how this new Doom game would sound, Gordon would literally cross out the word Doom, focusing on what this game is and not what it was. id Software had a very different view this time around. Rather than only wanting heavy metal, this time they wanted no guitars whatsoever. They felt it would make the game feel too corny, too cliche. While Gordon agreed at first, this was no easy undertaking. Doom was such an iconic game to begin with, so it was already hard enough trying to create something fresh but that also felt like the original. But to then be told you couldn't use guitars? Guitars were Doom. Needless to say, Gordon had his work cut out for him.
We spent the first couple of months just experimenting with synthesizers and coming up with different synth sounds and seeing how far we could push synths. And we did things like took synths and ran them through guitar pedals and stuff like that to try and make them really aggressive and angry and play the role of a guitar, but it had a different sound, it had a different sort of vibe about it.
While his masterful use of synths fit perfectly with the bleak underworld setting of Doom, and even complemented much of the fast-paced, in-your-face gameplay, it just didn't feel quite right. It didn't feel like Doom. The gameplay of this new Doom was heavily inspired by the original. Most shooters these days are far slower, more methodical. Even some of the faster games like Call of Duty are at a snail's pace when compared to what Doom was doing. Lightning fast movement, air strafing, and an absolutely massive arsenal of weapons. Something was missing from its sound. Perhaps all the fear of just retreading the past was pointless. Maybe it was time to not only embrace what came before, but to take it even further. One thing was clear. Doom needed guitars. This final piece of the puzzle managed to result in a perfect sound for this new Doom. Gordon paid respect to the original in tracks like At Doom's Gate, as well as the many slower, atmospheric puzzle sections throughout the game. But when it's time to start slaying demons, it cranks the energy way past 11. Gordon used extremely fast tempos, banging drums, and deep, guttural guitar riffs to make each song sound as angry and violent as possible. The madman even sampled a literal chainsaw in the track Hellwalker to add to that deep, industrial metal sound. The best part of this track is probably that it's literally just the menu music. That build-up to the ripping roar of a chainsaw perfectly embodies the suspense and anticipation this menu gives you. It's just egging you on to load in and start shooting some demons. All these features made it feel like a completely new, yet perfectly fitting and violent Doom experience. But Doom 2016 was only the beginning, a test run for what would far surpass it. Doom Eternal. They already had their formula laid out right in front of them. All Gordon had to do was execute. But there was one big issue. The gameplay of Eternal was made to be even more complex, having a much bigger selection of abilities and resources to keep track of.
I remember the first track I put together was like really quick. It was about 264 beats per minute. It was like really, really fast, like really, really, really quick. And when we put that into the game in a really challenging level that was halfway through the game, and there was so much going on in the game that the player had to focus on, the music was actually just getting annoying. Like, it might have been a cool track on its own, but it was just annoying in the game. It was just frustrating the QA department. And so everybody was like, it's not working, we've got to try something else. And I think it's tempting in that stage to be like, those blocks of the pressure that you have, might start influencing you a certain way, but you really have to kind of say, like, what's going to do best for the game. You need to kind of shed all that pressure and just focus on what's going to work out best. And that's why a lot more of the music in Doom Eternal is sort of slower groove-based stuff. Stuff like Meat Hook that's a lot slower, that right? It's a lot slower and sort of groovier. And that was purposeful because it was almost like it allowed the player to make their cognitive decisions in between the beats, right? So that way they could process all the information of the game that they needed without this crazy music kind of trying to get in their way.
This decision worked out beautifully. The tracks flow even better during gameplay than 2016, and feel even more impactful. The track Gordon mentions, Meat Hook, might be my favorite. In Eternal, you get a literal meat hook attached to your super shotgun, letting you zip around the map even faster. This song somehow fits with that amped up movement so well. Its slower, more groove-based sound not only complements the flow of movement, but makes every beat drop that much more impactful. Gordon's mindset was to create music that you would not only enjoy hearing while playing, but listen to outside of the game as well. And as someone who often blasts Doom music while working out, I think it's safe to say he's reached that goal. You would typically never think of Doom and Animal Crossing in the same vein, but when it comes to their music, the similarities can't be overlooked. Both unabashedly gained their identity from their music, putting their sound right at the forefront of the game, letting it define both the game's confidence and how the player should feel. You want to feel relaxed? Go fish on Animal Crossing. Want to feel like you can 1v1 the sun? Hop on Doom.
My favorite video game song is the night theme of Satoral Marsh from Xenoblade Chronicles. When I was playing through the game for the first time, I hadn't yet totally fallen in love with RPGs, and so the game wasn't really grabbing me. However, I pressed onward, and eventually I reached Satoral Marsh. In the daytime, it's this foggy, drab wasteland with very little interesting going on. The daytime theme is great, however, and so I stuck around to explore a bit. Eventually, nightfall came, and the neon blues and pinks swirling into the sky, the wisps of ether slowly flowing off the trees, and that gorgeous night theme swept me off my feet. It was genuinely one of the most breathtaking moments I've ever experienced in a video game. And it was in that moment that I realized that I was playing what would probably become one of my favorite games. I was right, and it's an experience I look back on fondly as a result. If I ever want to take my mind off something and get lost in fond memories of a gorgeous vista, I listen to the Satoral Marsh night theme.
There are hundreds of thousands of games that exist, but few that we actually remember. So many of these games have become lost to time, and some never even got the chance to thrive. But there's always those select few that stick with us. Games that go on to define how we look at other media, and even ourselves. And if there's one way for a game to do that, it's by a song. Few games stand above the rest in this way, their games becoming so iconic, so memorable, that even those who've never even played games are familiar with it. The Legend of Zelda series is an example of this. It has become synonymous with beautiful, whimsical, and adventurous melodies, with some of the most memorable pieces in all of gaming. But one entry in this franchise has always been the most iconic. Ocarina of Time was a landmark entry in the series for hundreds of reasons, but perhaps the most central of these, baked into the very DNA of the game, was the music. The moment that title screen fades in, you are met with a soft, gentle piano, gliding like the wind. It's peaceful, with a hint of sadness, and the moment the ocarina begins playing, everything comes together. You know exactly what kind of adventure you're about to embark upon. A journey across a fantasy world filled with magic and whimsy, but rooted in a deep tragedy all the same. The addition of Epona's trotting echoing through the empty plains adds to a sense of loneliness, something that will be forced onto Link, onto the hero of time. It is truly the perfect title screen, and this theme never ceases to comfort me every time I hear it. But this masterful use of melodies doesn't stop here. Kokiri Forest's theme is bright, colorful, and peaceful all at once. It tells the player of the pure innocence and joyful childhood that Link has, and the safety provided by the Deku Tree. We are meant to feel comfortable here, and the use of a flute and marimba adds so much to that childlike innocence. Much of the early game has music like this. We're viewing this world from a kid's perspective, so tracks like The Lost Woods, Goron City, and Hyrule Castle Town are all energetic or adventurous. They're fun. Hearing these themes truly puts a smile on my face, as they're all so catchy and intentional in what they want to say. And it's why the contrast to this next theme is so poignant. After completing the quest you and Zelda set out on, collecting the 3 spiritual stones in order to protect the Triforce, eventually you enter the Temple of Time, and this theme plays. It's unlike anything you've heard before. Hauntingly ethereal, somber, and it gives you such a strong feeling of importance. The Temple of Time is the turning point of the game. Pulling the Master Sword traps Link within the sacred realm for 7 years. In the blink of an eye, Link has lost his childhood. He's forced to mature, to become a hero, all against his will. The game takes a dark turn, and this theme does a perfect job of conveying that outcome. It is the calm before the storm. But in order to even reach this sacred realm in the first place, you have to interact with the most crucial part of this game. An aspect of Ocarina of Time that makes the game what it is. The one thing that makes its music so special. The ocarina itself. When we first leave Kokiri Forest, Saria gifts us an ocarina, and it becomes our most important item for much of the game. Playing different songs on it will have different effects, like the Sun Song, letting you change the time of day, or the absolute banger that is the Song of Storms, giving you the power to change the weather. Even aside from its many abilities, I always loved just messing around with it. Playing my own music and trying to create my own melodies, it was such a fun feature that wasn't seen in many games at the time. Each song you play on it is so incredibly distinct and impossible to forget. But what makes many of these ocarina songs truly impressive are their limitations. Koji Kondo was the composer for Ocarina of Time, and just like Bobby Prince on Doom, Kondo could only use 5 different notes for the ocarina, as each note would be mapped to 5 different button inputs the player could use. While this was a big handicap for him, it may have contributed to making some of these tunes so catchy and iconic. You see, when you successfully play a song on the ocarina, the game will play the same melody back to you, but filled out with orchestration and harmonies. While this allowed Kondo to flesh out each of his songs, it also meant he needed to write them simple enough so they could be played as both a solo and a harmony. It's amazingly impressive then that he managed to write so many unique tracks, many of which went on to become synonymous with the Zelda series. Perhaps the forced simplicity of those first few notes of each song played a part in that. Simple, yet unforgettable. Zelda's Lullaby is the most used of the ocarina songs, and may just be the most famous piece of Zelda music. However, this song actually isn't from Ocarina of Time. It first debuted in A Link to the Past, the only ocarina song not original to Ocarina of Time. It's this song that likely influenced Kondo's choice of notes, as he knew he would need A, B, and D. With these in mind, he chose his final 2 notes, another D 1 octave higher, and F, giving him a minor triad and 2 octaves of the same pitch. This gave him all the tools he needed. It all led to a very intentional and masterful use of these notes to craft a truly transcendent soundtrack. It's the kind of music that makes you stop and realize that what you're hearing, what you're experiencing, is something you'll never forget. There's another game that I feel does the opposite of this. Its music was made to be simple, just background noise. It's humble, quiet. No epic orchestral flair, no grand moment of realization that what you're hearing is something unforgettable. In fact, when first playing, you may not even notice it at all. And yet, it is perhaps one of the greatest video game soundtracks of all time. You are alone. It's midsummer, and there's no school tomorrow. It's getting kind of late, so your family is all asleep. You decide to get on the game, load into your favorite world, and you hear this. I've talked about Minecraft a lot on this channel, and for good reason. It is likely the most impactful game of my life, but something I've yet to delve into is its soundtrack. When judging things from the past, it's easy to use the rose-tinted glasses argument, deciding that something's value is entirely based on the nostalgia you have for it, that our memories of it make it so much more than the sum of its parts. For many things that people look back fondly upon, this holds true. But it makes me wonder, is that really a bad thing? I recently showed the Minecraft soundtrack to my girlfriend, who had never heard it until now, and had never even touched the game before. To my unsurprise, she really enjoyed it, but that's kind of where it ended. Simple enjoyment. She saw it as nice ambient piano music to relax or sleep to. While I appreciated how much she did seem to like it, I couldn't help but feel isolated. Like I was alone in my understanding of just how important this music is. It made me realize the true power of nostalgia. To her, it was nothing more than simple piano melodies. But to myself, and to nearly every single person watching this video, the millions of us who all experienced this game as kids, it is so much more than that. This music is like a window into the past, a way for us to relive our memories from a childhood slowly fading more and more each day. It's amazing that a soundtrack as beautiful as Minecraft's can be made even greater in the context of the game, of our memory. It's this combination, this mixture of melodies and memories that have crafted the most influential sounds of my life. Even at the very beginning of the game, it was a super lonely experience. I kind of liked that. Daniel Rosenfeld, or C418, Minecraft's composer, knew how the game should sound right from the start. Minecraft is a lonely game. Every world you create is completely different from the last, a landscape that you will likely be the only one to ever witness. No matter what direction you travel, there always seems to be more to find. The world is so vast and endless that it makes you feel small in comparison. The music needed to match this feeling. If I had to use one word to describe the sound of Minecraft, it would have to be emotional. But what does that really mean? What does emotional music sound like? And what does it mean for Minecraft? To me, I envision this. You wake up alone, endless grass plains surrounding you. Amidst the horizon, you see mountains and forests. You look up at the sky, the blocky clouds, and they seem to invite you towards them. To build. You venture towards the horizon, in search of a place for a home, and as you walk, the silence and empty air is broken as a quiet piano begins playing. This was the key to Minecraft's melancholic sound, its instrumentation. There is a heavy use of acoustic sounding instruments with lots of strings and synths, but the primary piece of nearly every song is in fact the piano, almost acting as a sort of main character for the soundtrack, as a stand-in for the player. To maintain this peaceful atmosphere, there's almost no percussion to be found at all, just slow, simple melodies. It makes perfect sense for a game you'd likely be playing for hours on end, to either relax or de-stress. Back when the game was in development, they didn't have the technology needed for dynamic music, so they had no way of knowing what the player would be doing at any point in time. You could be exploring, fighting mobs, building a house, organizing your items, all these different things, but they had no way of matching the music to these actions due to their sound engine. This is why every track follows a very similar style, as any song could be heard at any time. But it also led to perhaps the best aspect of this soundtrack: the breaks. Once a song is finished, it will fade into silence, and a new song won't play until 10 to 20 minutes later. It doesn't matter how brilliant a song may be, if you listen to it too many times, it'll start to get old. So with songs that only played every so often, they would always be pleasing, reassuring when they began playing again, like an old friend reminding you he's still there. With the long stretches of silence in between, it gave plenty of time to reflect, both on the game itself, but the music too. Most games jump from track to track almost instantaneously, but Minecraft allows you time to think about what just played, to remember it. My favorite of these songs has to be Subwoofer Lullaby. It was one of the first songs I ever remember hearing from the game, and its melody is just so warming for me to listen to. It begins with this innocent, organic synth echoing around you. The melody is happy, cheerful, but with the slightest hint of sadness. I have so many fond memories of playing on my first survival world with a childhood friend, with this song coming on while we were digging out the side of a mountain to build our house. I see this song as a kind of reflection of my time with Minecraft. The synths near the start of the song represent my childhood, the innocence, the creativity, the bliss of those summer nights building the coolest things I could think of, staying up late, laughing with my friends until I couldn't breathe. But over time, it starts to slow down and calmly resolves into this much more melancholic piano. The slow fade into the soft piano is where I am now, the time that's passed. In the blink of an eye, those days are over, and life is so much bigger now. These worlds just don't seem all that infinite anymore. The spark has been extinguished. But as this piano continues, the synth meets it once again, completing the melody. Almost as if to say, it's okay. Just because those days are gone doesn't mean that our memories of it are. That is the beauty of each of these songs. Minecraft is a sandbox game, and so too is its music. Every player can choose to build their own meaning and create their own memories for each and every song. Over the years, the game has received many updates, and some recent ones have included brand new music from new composers. Initially, it was easy to be put off by this. C418's work on the game is nothing less than iconic, and to bring in new music felt almost disrespectful to the classics. Of course, this new music would turn out to be phenomenal in its own right, but never overshadowing the originals. In-game, the old music could still be heard plenty, and with a modern sound engine, many of these new songs could be played dynamically depending on what biome you're in. For example, when in a dripstone cave, the track An Ordinary Day will play. Each track still feels exceptionally Minecraft, following in C418's footsteps, creating very calming, ambient music to relax the player. And as much as I really do love these new songs, they've helped me realize something. In the very same way my girlfriend saw the original soundtrack as music and nothing more, that is how I see this new soundtrack. Music and nothing more. Yes, it's beautiful. Yes, it fits. But it's not that original soundtrack. Nostalgia is a powerful thing. No matter how much this game changes, no matter how many updates and new additions and new music it receives, no matter how much I might change, once those piano notes begin to play, I'm a kid again. Back in my room on a late summer night, staying up playing my favorite game with my friends. Because Minecraft's music is more than just background noise, and it's more than just a way to make you feel. The game wouldn't be what it is without its soundtrack. This music is Minecraft.
So, my favourite video game song of all time is kind of a tie. Whilst I would like to speak about Gusty Garden Galaxy, I do feel like someone has already beaten me to the punch for that one. So instead, I've gone for a song that kind of revolutionised my perception of how powerful music could be for a video game. Light of Nibel is a song played a handful of times in Ori and the Blind Forest, mostly in the credits, but for the moment it played during the Ginzo tree escape, it instantly transcended my feelings on video game orchestration to a place so high I can't even see it. Something about the intensity constantly ramping up as you scale a massive interconnected tree, combined with the fantastic piano work that adds a deep somberness to its tone, will always be unforgettable to me. It's the first extreme moment in Ori, so its impact is bold and leaves you wanting to endlessly replay that section over and over again, and its eventual climax into a gentle melodic symphony is forever going to make that moment a monument in time for me. Because of that, it's one of my favourite gaming memories, and subsequently, my favourite video game song as well.
There is a third avenue, another path for music to take. It can be more than just something to fill in the silence, and can be taken further than making you feel a certain way. It is my favorite use of music in games, making it just as important to the story as the gameplay or visuals themselves. Using a song to tell a story. And there's one game that I think does it best. Hollow Knight takes place in a world steeped in dense lore and history. Every location has its own musical theme that gives a sense of what that place used to be, and what it has become. But for the most part, these tracks are complementary, just ambience for each part of the kingdom. But this philosophy is changed for the final boss of the game. Much like Gwyn in Dark Souls, the music begins its own narrative. When I first played Hollow Knight, I made the very common mistake of referring to the player character as the Hollow Knight. After all, he is on the front cover of the game, titled Hollow Knight, and we are still, in fact, a knight. But by reaching the City of Tears, we are met with a great statue of this mysterious Hollow Knight. It's accompanied by a very melancholic reprisal of the Hollow Knight theme, which is typically just used as the title screen music. This statue implies a certain reverence for the Hollow Knight, but the music implies something darker, more tragic. However, this actually isn't the first time we've seen the Hollow Knight. At the very start of the game, we get a glimpse of him from inside of the black egg, letting out a rattling screech. It's our first hint at the experiment, the attempt to save the kingdom, gone horribly wrong. You see, the infection that has spread all across Hallownest is what led it to ruin, and so the Pale King, the king of Hallownest, devised a plan to stop it. The Hollow Knight is the offspring of the Pale King, and so are we. So is Hornet, and so is every one of the vessels you meet, dead or alive. The king chose to weaponize his own children against the infection to save his kingdom, his creation. He would fuse his offspring with Void, a dark and powerful substance, hoping to create the perfect, pure vessel to contain the infection, to stop it from spreading. But for one to truly be a pure vessel, they must lack both a will and a mind, or else they will become enslaved by the infection. No emotion, no connection. They must be fully and completely hollow. Eventually, a vessel was chosen to become the Hollow Knight, nothing more than an emotionless puppet made by the Pale King to contain the infection. Or so the Pale King thought. When we enter the chamber of the Black Egg to take on the final boss of the game, we find the Hollow Knight chained up, overtaken by the infection. He can't contain the infection any longer, as it's escaping from him, spreading throughout the kingdom more and more each day. And so, we begin our final battle against this failed experiment. The final track plays, fittingly titled, Sealed Vessel. It is grand and epic, everything you'd expect in a blood-pumping final fight. The Hollow Knight seems to have lost any sense of itself, fully possessed by the infection. Its attacks are clean and calculated from its years of training and conditioning by the Pale King. But behind the chaos of the many wind instruments, a theme can be made out. It's the Hollow Knight theme. Trying to climb its way to the surface, but being overshadowed by everything else. The Hollow Knight is still inside, still struggling against the infection. The fight continues as this arpeggio of winds takes over again. Drums begin to build. Cutting in and out like something from inside the Hollow Knight is trying to... He screams. The same blood-curdling screech heard at the start of the game. He takes his own blade and thrusts it into himself. He does it again and again until he topples over. This is the turning point of the fight. Every other boss fight until now has been full of luster and intensity, contrasting the somber tone of the rest of the game. But here, at the end, against the final, most terrifying boss, a violin begins to play. the fight takes a deeply emotional pivot. The Hollow Knight is no longer this monstrous being possessed by the infection, but a helpless puppet pleading for help. Every time he thrusts his sword into himself, it's him breaking free of the infection's hold on his mind and trying to fend it off, to defeat the threat he was born to contain, to fulfill his father's wishes, regardless of the pain that he's in. Imagine this. Even from a child, you were taught never to feel, denied friendship, personhood, love. All you are is a tool, a mockery of life used by your own father. But despite all the suffering, all the pain, your father is all you have, so you grow affection for him. But this affection would spell your own doom. No, perhaps you were already doomed, gaining a mind of your own, becoming corruptible. You weren't hollow, but you would convince yourself you are, that you will be the one to save your kingdom, to earn your father's love, even if you are never there to hear it. You become the Hollow Knight. You will seal away the enemy and fulfill your duty. You will be locked up in the dark, wrapped in chains, cold and alone, forever. He's broken free from this curse, the power of the infection. But for him, it's too late. With the infection being spread out into the air, the Knight focuses it into itself, and the Hollow Knight is no more. The Knight, the player character, you become the new Hollow Knight. The infection is now within you, an extension of the Pale King's will, to subject his own offspring to a fate worse than death. A final reprisal of the Hollow Knight theme echoes throughout the chamber. The legacy, the fate of the Hollow Knight, is tragedy. Christopher Larkin, the composer for Hollow Knight, is truly a master of leitmotifs. He uses these recurrent musical themes throughout his tracks not just to give a musical identity to characters or events in the game, but to connect different tracks together. In a way, the Hollow Knight theme could rather be seen as the Vessel's theme. It plays during this final battle, during the Broken Vessel theme, and of course, every time we load up the game. The Vessels are the true victims of this story, and this final theme represents that idea beautifully through its amazing emotional climax. When a song tells a story, it's one you will never forget. There are so many video game songs that I hold in such high regard, making it near impossible for me to choose a single favorite. But I think there's really only one option for me. Nuvema Town from Pokemon Black and White. If I've learned anything from Minecraft, it's that music holds memories, and perhaps my fondest childhood memories, the most impactful gaming moments of my life, came from Black and White, and Nuvema Town is where that journey began. It's your hometown in the game, being the place you start your adventure, and the same place you finally come back to after completing the story. It has such an easy, relaxed tone. The use of an accordion and a flute makes it feel so warm and welcoming, like a hug from your mom. It has this way of sticking in your brain, never letting you forget where you came from. And in just the same way you hear that song after finishing the game, welcoming you back home, anytime I hear it now, it feels like I'm being welcomed back to my childhood. The times I would stay up late on a school night, playing my DS in bed, slipping it under my pillow as fast as I could whenever I would hear footsteps. Black and White are, in a way, my hometown of video games. New Town was my introduction into a franchise I adore. And for that, it will always be my favorite video game song of all time. Music is just another outlet for storytelling, a way to enhance a piece of media like nothing else can. But sometimes, the best uses of music are not using it at all. Dark Souls is a brilliant example of this. Throughout much of the game, Dark Souls chooses to use silence to its advantage. It surrounds you with the empty sounds of the world around you. The wind blowing, distant birds chirping, and the constant echo of your own steps. This vacant personality that the game gives off is exactly how it wants you to feel. The world of Dark Souls is vacant. A dying world struggling to hold on, grasping at embers of a once blazing flame. The lack of music creates a deeper sense of immersion, like there's no barrier between you and this empty world, desperate for you to fill that void. It makes the few cases where music is used feel like no other, from the adrenaline rush of each boss fight to the safety and comfort of Firelink Shrine. But there's one song, one moment that perfectly ties the entire game together, and it comes at the very end. After you defeat Gwyn, you choose to either link the flame and continue the Age of Fire, or descend into the Age of Dark, becoming the new Dark Lord. A cutscene plays, and the credits roll. You did it. You finally did it. After hours of difficulty and repetition, you finally beat Dark Souls. And what do you receive? Not triumph, not a grand send-off, but melancholy, peace. A lone woman's voice to serenade you in your achievement. No one will ever know your name or what you've done, the journey you've embarked upon, the hardships you've faced. But that's okay, because the most difficult battles are rewarded not with triumph, not with glory, but by simply being alive. To know that you yourself made it to the other side. That is why this song is named what it is. The Nameless Song. It is a wistful goodbye to the player, not needing to congratulate them, because the only person who truly knows the weight of their achievement is themselves. Music. One word with so much importance behind it, so much influence. In a single flourish of sound, a single theme, a game can be fundamentally changed. So, I'd like to ask something of you. Next time you play a game, next time you're fighting that boss, watching that cutscene, or seeing the credits roll, take a moment to listen to what the game is telling you, what it has to say. Because when music transcends the game, you'll know it when you hear it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, remember to leave a like, and if you want to see more content from me, then feel free to subscribe. I recently made a second channel where I'll be uploading more frequent, unscripted videos, so feel free to subscribe to that channel as well. Join the Discord and follow me on Twitter, links are both in the description. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who supports me on Patreon. As always, my name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.